In this video, I'm going to teach you how to render a floor plan. And what you're looking at here is my floor plan that I've added some texture and color to. Now, I'm using the same techniques that we've already looked at so far, in which we're kind of blending colors together because of course the colors that we have in our box are not an exact match to the swatches that we're trying to replicate. But I began by mixing my colors and applying them kind of flat to the surfaces here. But of course I'm using either stippling, cross-hatching, or scumbling, or a combination of several techniques. So once I have the color applied, then what I've done, like for example here, I did a mixture of a couple of different gold colors and then used my blender, of course, to blend everything. And then I added a very subtle cross-hatching detail, but it's a diagonal cross-hatch going like in an angle like this, because that's the material on my carpet. Now, on the carpet, you have to be really aware of the scale because the cross-hatching here is very, very small. Same thing with the scale of the upholstery here. It's really small, so just some very small scumbling and stippling will replicate that real simple texture right there. And then you can see how from my wood floor here, I did the same mixtures of brown that I created in my earlier swatch. And then right before I draw my lines that indicate the planks of the floor, I have to figure out how big the planks are going to be. Now this printout here, you can see I've got an underlay of, I've got vellum on top of my printout here. But you can see my underlay is actually not to scale. There's no scale here. I was just trying to get it as big as I could on a half sheet of paper. And so we don't have a scale that we can measure from. But what I can do is say, well, if this chair is 2 feet wide, then this line right here is 1 foot. And then this line right here is 6 inches. So my planks, when I come in and draw them, I'm gonna come in about 6 inches. And I can use a dark pen, or I can come in with my white and start to indicate those so that it's very, very subtle, but indicates a sense of scale. And that's the thing you have to keep in mind when you're rendering any kind of drawing, like an elevation or a plan, is you have to make sure that you're keeping everything to scale. And then again, layering all the colors just as you have with other swatches, because what you don't want is for these plans and these elevations to look flat like a coloring book. And so just continuing on, to make this kind of fuchsia chair, I actually began with a very soft stippling of my very light pink here, and then I came in for the darker back here with this fuchsia, and then I even did a little strip of red along the back here. And then I also came in with my pen. You can use this pen or you can use a Sharpie, and added some stippling here. For this one, you can see here, this is the travertine tabletop, and I started here with a blender, and then I came in with some of my kind of more golden brown colors, and just added some strokes that I really gently blended in. And then I came in with my pencil and added some of the dots to indicate the texture of that travertine. Now the console table back here is bright white lacquer, and probably it would make sense to just leave it white because that's what it's going to be in real life. But if you leave a white object white in a rendering, it looks like you didn't render it. It looks like you forgot something. So even though it's white, I'm still adding a little bit of value on this side and just a little bit of color. All I did really was I rubbed my blender a little bit in this travertine and then used it to create a very, very soft wash on this back table. So again, it's important to remember the same techniques that you've used in the past with the strokes, mixing your color and then adding texture with your pens and even your white pencil are just as important on a floor plan as they are when you're making individual swatches. But the part that's the most fun about rendering these views is when you start to think about the effect of light. Now, right now, it's just a blend of color with a little bit of stippling. But what's cool about this is that eventually you're going to go ahead and poche in with black the indications of your walls. And you can use this thick marker, or if you want to save that, you can always use a Sharpie. Those are cheaper. But once you've got everything rendered, then it's really, really fun to come in with what I've got here. This is a gray, but you want to get like a warm gray, or a cool gray. You can see here, this is a cool gray. And these come in, these markers come in a big box with all different, you know, gradations of gray. I like to use like a warm gray 9 or 8, and really kind of bring in some darks. And why am I bringing in a dark color right here? Well, it's because there's a light source right here, right? So there's light coming through this window. So that means that everything in front of the window that's blocked by an object is going to have a shadow. And so down here, this is going to have a shadow here. Oops, I got to clean my marker. See how I got the pink here? And now it's all over. That's okay. Lesson learned. So this is going to have a shadow here. It's going to come across. And unfortunately, mine's going to be a little bit pink, but yours won't. Hey, this one's pink too. Okay, now when I render these chairs back here, I'm also going to have a shadow behind those chairs back here. Now, once this whole carpet is rendered, you can see I just rendered patches here, but you're going to render the whole thing. And so once you get that, all the materials rendered, then you come in and lay shadows on top. And so imagine I'm applying this dark gray over top of this gold rug color. And so it's going to look really, really nice. And if this table wasn't here, I would also put a shadow here, but you wouldn't be able to see the shadow on the chair because it's going to be on the floor and it's covered by the rug. Or pardon me, it's covered by the table. There's going to be another shadow right here. And the darker, the better on these. Okay? Like I said, I'm using a cool gray because that's what I had. But if you have a warm gray and you're using like a warm color palette like we have, and you can get a 9 or so, something really nice and dark, that'll look good here. There's another one here. And there'll be one here. And another one here. Okay, now the shadows are really fun. The darker the better, but the highlights are fun too, right? Because right where this window is, there's going to be a pool of light coming in. So this floor is going to be light all in front of this window, and this rug's going to be light, right? So imagine this was all fully rendered and I had completed it. See, it's going to be really light right here. There's going to be a hot spot, which is what we call a big pool of light. It's going to be a hot spot right in the middle of this table. And there's probably going to be a hot spot right around here once this is rendered in. And then once it gets here, it's going to kind of start to be blocked by the table. So there's not going to be quite as many hot spots here. If you really want to get sophisticated, you can draw your lamps here. It's not required, but if you want to draw your lamps here, then there'd be a pool of light here. We are not showing on this floor plan the objects that are on the ceiling. So if you're wondering if I do a hot spot under this pendant light, we're not going to show that pendant light on a floor plan. But you can see here kind of bringing in those really bright highlights combined with the dark shadows. It looks really, really good, and it's going to start to pop it up off your screen. And all of those things, the shadows, the blending of colors, and the highlights brings it from looking like a flat coloring book drawn by a child into something that's elevated into craftsmanship that represents someone who really knows what they're doing. Now, the last thing that I want to call your attention to is I've got little outlines on my objects. Now, I'm trying desperately not to make them look like a coloring book. So I'm going super, super light. Now, were I to really want to emphasize this, let's say it gets lost a little bit once this carpet's rendered, I can come in here really light. And I don't need much because this is a light colored object. But all I'm going to do is just kind of add a little bit of line weight to the edges and just kind of fade it out. And that's going to make it pop out a little bit. This is what we call line weight variation on objects. And it's just kind of bringing in a little bit of that painterly effect, and what's going to happen is it's going to start popping out. Be mindful of your light source. So I can't get too dark in the corners here, but I can bring a little bit here. Just kind of fade it out so it's not abrupt, you know, a big abrupt V in the corner. I'll do a little bit more here. Just kind of popping that out. Maybe add a little bit of stippling. And again, it's not an outline. It's just kind of popping it up from the surface a little bit with line weight variation. And then you have a beautifully rendered floor plan once this is all complete.